I'm Sean Halsall, and welcome to What's Left.
When I said, hey, hey, what's wrong with you? I want to turn you round upside down just to see you smile. You know I'm gonna be there,
1, 2, 3, 4. Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year, and welcome to What's Left. So, without further ado, I'll introduce my co-host, George White.
Hi.
Hi, George. And Renee Barnett.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year, Renee. Happy New Year, George. How's everyone doing?
Yeah.
All right. New Year's starting out very, very busy, which I guess is a good thing. A little tiring, but can't complain.
Excellent. How about you, George?
Yeah, I think we all look exhausted, don't we?
I think we are. I think we're making a valiant effort today. But yeah, I mean, there's so much going on. We couldn't not do something. So where do we begin, guys? My goodness, there's so much going on. Should we go to Gaza?
Yes. Yeah, so we're recording today on the 11th of January, which is the day that South Africa started their court case against Israel, sort of trying to halt the destruction in Gaza and force Israel and the countries supporting Israel to sort of make every effort to stop it.
So we're talking about the case that was brought by the African country in the UN, right? In the United Nations. The United Nations is holding this case.
Yeah. At the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, South Africa have brought the case, which I think's interesting because of the history in South Africa of apartheid and so that. And again, I believe South Africa was a big supporter of Israel obviously Mandela and sort of the end of apartheid in South Africa. So I think they always saw themselves as kindred spirits as states.
I see. And then, so what are the ramifications of this case? What happens at the end? What are they judging? They're judging or not whether they're committing genocide? Is that what the question is before the UN?
The case for the genocide will take years to go because there'll have to be proper investigations. This is just to see whether genocide is sort of possible, I believe.
Right. Whether or not it should go further, the investigation?
I think the investigation will go further regardless. I think this is just to sort of force Israel and Israel's allies to call a halt and do everything possible to sort of stop a genocide potentially happening or stop a genocide that is happening. I think it's the wording that I'd heard.
Yeah. We have so much going on here in the United States that, it occurred to me before we went live that, it's almost planned. It seems like that we've got so much brouhaha over here with, all the Trump cases and the, impending election and all this that, our minds are so occupied with, oh my God, what's going to happen, in our country in November, that I think we've been, or at least I have admittedly been distracted away from the rest of the world. It's almost as though it's part of the plan, part of the evil plan, let's keep them looking over here so that they don't get upset about what's really horrible that's going on over here. So I wonder how many people are really as informed about the situation, Sean, is like you or George are, say. I don't think the general public is, quite, has quite been clued in like you guys have. So maybe if you just, explain a little bit. I mean, I could use an explanation of, just what it is that Israel is doing that this case has been brought for, and you know, even though you think maybe everybody should know it, but you know, as you see, not everybody does, at least not me. So
And I often wonder if everyone's as sort of clued up, or if we're in a bit of an echo chamber in sort of the trade union movement and sort of political side of the movement we're in. But
that's right.
I think it's I mean, the language being used by politicians over in Israel, it's kind of impossible to deny that there's sort of genocidal language being used in the intent. I mean, we've got stuff like Netanyahu saying, beat them up not once but repeatedly, beat them up so it hurts so badly until it's unbearable. Now, I mean, that's not humanistic language. That's not how we should be speaking about any sort of humans. I don't know what are your thoughts, George?
Well, I think you know, sort of an exact figure on it or something, but I read whether it's moved on since then, but 28,000 people dead, and you've got things like one of the Israeli ministers sort of signing with a Sharpie, signing one of the bombs, one of the missiles that's getting fired over into there. It's not. It doesn't line up. And bearing in mind that of the 28,000 dead, around half of them are children. You know, X proportion of them are, you know, women, and most of them cannot be in any way attributed as, you know, combatants or something. This is not like an ordinary sort of casualty figure where it's you know, the people who are being counted as dead are soldiers on each side.
Soldiers, yeah.
And you know, this is purposefully and deliberately civilians are being killed in Gaza.
I just don't know how we've come to this place. I mean, not come to this place, but never left this place. It still seems insane to me that we, as, you know, supposedly intelligent and evolved beings, are still fighting over land and power and, you know, throwing young lives at every issue. And these guys that are, you know, making the decisions, you know, they're not out there putting their lives on the line, you know. So it's just all, you know, on every side. I mean, every way you look at it, it's messed up. It's messed up, you know, for the soldiers that are being used, and, you know, for the civilians that are dying, and for the soldiers that are dying, quite frankly, because
I mean, this is beyond doubt the most sort of watched war. I mean, it's not really a war, it's more of a massacre, but on social media we've ever seen. We've not seen the likes of it ever. And you're sort of seeing absolutely horrific things from IDF soldiers. It's impossible really to feel much sympathy for a bunch of people who are burning people's houses down as they leave, which is a war crime. Singing and chanting about erasing a group of people, dancing around. It's all on TikTok for the world to see. And it baffles me how we've still got people talking that this isn't a problem, or Israel have got the right to defend themselves. And it's hard to understand how a state can defend itself from a group of people it occupies.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, and that's horrible, and I completely agree. But just to play devil's advocate, you know, after the October attack on Israel, we saw those guys dancing around, you know, because they, you know, stabbed someone, or, you know, did something, or, you know, were laughing. It's like, it's not good when either side does it. I'm just saying that's what people would say. I'm saying that, you know, I'm on the side of, you know, people not getting killed at all.
Absolutely.
You know, and I can certainly see the Palestinian point of view. I mean, they were there. They were on the land. They, you know, and they were just pushed out, and, you know, all kinds of horrible things have gone on. I totally get that. And, but I'm just saying, from the public point of view and what we're seeing, there's always a but, you know, well, they were dancing around, but so were the Palestinians, or, you know, whoever those guys were.
We can't just analyze what's going on and look at what's going on through the lens of this started on October the 7th. There's decades and decades of illegal occupation, where the UN have time and time again pointed this out. And I know what you're saying, where you're saying about people see both sides and whatever. It's most of the world now are firmly against what is happening there. I think it's a very Western sort of, the Western media and politicians are sort of isolating themselves almost. And it's interesting to see that the global South, and with it being South Africa to be the one to sort of start these proceedings.
I like that. Yeah, I think that's a good place to start.
I just hope that the rest of the world's paying attention, and that they get support, and this absolute senseless killing is finished, because you can't. I mean, how many Palestinian lives have to be lost before Israel are happy with sort of getting vengeance for what happened on October the 7th?
What are they trying to achieve? I mean, it's just kill as many people as they can, or
in Netanyahu's own party's sort of founding document, it talks about Israel being from the river to the sea, which ironically, if you say that, you're apparently a Hamas supporter, but that is also in their founding document, Likud, I think they're called. So
that's weird. Here in the United States, you know, it's the, you know, pro-Palestinians that say, from the mountains to the sea, Palestine will be free, and they can't say that. They get, you know, they get expelled or get in trouble.
Same in the UK. But it's also in Netanyahu's party's founding document. I'll pull up the exact words now so I don't get it right.
Oh my gosh.
I'm getting it wrong, apologies. We found it.
That's crazy.
But yeah, it's definitely mentioned in their party's founding documents.
That is wild. You know, this is a question that I have for the table, if anybody has anything to say about it. You know, Israel is, you know, well known for having the, you know, Iron Dome, you know, supposedly impenetrable, and all that. And it's come out, or it's been around, that Israel had known for a while that this attack was coming, that they had intelligence or something, and that they left themselves vulnerable. Do you think that this was partially a setup, or at least, I'm assuming, you know, something that they were happy to take advantage of, you know, and just let the sort of, you know, attackers come in and let them run rampant for a little while, so that they outrage the world and the Israeli citizenry, and giving them justification for doing what they're doing now, which is what they wanted to do all along?
I don't necessarily go as far. It does sound a little bit conspiratorial.
I know,
but I do have to question the sort of idea that you know, there is literally a wall built around Gaza, and an exclusion zone in front of that wall, and guard towers and army checkpoints and whatnot. It does beg the question of how did it happen as well? You know, I don't,
Yeah.
but I don't go in
Well-
with the conspiratorial line on it. But
Here in the United States, the answer would be, well, they had so many, terrorist attacks, suicide bombers, and things like that. And I realize, I didn't, but that the attacks like that have happened in Israel were always, major news here. And it made it look and feel to us like, the Palestinians were just coming over and attacking all the time and blowing up everything all the time, when that is not the case. I'm just saying it was emphasized. So that is, what has shaped a lot of people's opinions in the United States, because, we're being fed just like everybody else is, whatever their propaganda platform wants us to hear. It's like, how do you cut through and the propaganda and just make you able to look at the real picture, objectively? And if you could say, okay, these people were living on this land, suddenly they got pushed off, walled off, in all kinds of crazy things. I mean, I think people, would look at it in a different way if they just had the pure story. But what we get here is terrorists attack in Israel, all the time. And it really colors. I mean, just like everything else, just like the Fox News people, there's so many things that they don't hear because they don't report it, because it runs counter to their narrative. There's a lot of really astounding things about, Trump that nobody that watches Fox News has ever heard, including people that you would think would be informed.
Again, I think the massive problem in American media when it comes to foreign policy is there isn't that much difference between what you'd think of as the left-wing broadcasters and right-wing broadcasters when it comes to foreign policy. Granted, yeah, in domestic
Right.
issues, massively different, but I think how the Iraq War was sort of reported, there's not a lot of difference from any of the outlets there.
Right. I mean, I guess I see what you mean, and yet certainly much less difference than there is in their internal policies, American policies. But there is definitely, like, for instance, on the right and on the right media, there's definitely a sort of pro-Putinish kind of sentiment. There's an anti-Ukraine war. There's a bit of an anti-Zelensky. Whereas on the left, or what we have as our left here, is, all pro-Ukraine, and anti-Putin, and, anti-anybody, attacking like that, unless it's us, of course.
I think this is almost an absolutely perfect spot to sort of talk about. You said then what we call the left in the United States. So how do we go around building an actual left which represents workers, say, and supports the trade unions properly, not just turn to a picket line now and again, but actually putting legislation in which would support workers in organising and bringing democracy to workplaces, and maybe having someone who can be anti-war in Senate or Congress, because that seems almost impossible at the moment. So what sort of things do you think, Renee, could happen there? Do you think there is space opening up for a third party, a genuine workers' party?
It's really interesting because, of course, we've been paying such close attention to the right and to the Republican Party, which has completely changed, over the last, I guess, 20 years, probably, since the what was that called? Not the Patriot movement, but anyway, I can't.
The Tea Party?
The Tea Party movement, yeah. Since the Tea Party, it started there with them, and now it's almost flipped completely into this MAGA crazy party with people that quite frankly don't really know what they're doing. A lot of them. So what we've been doing is thinking, oh, the Republican Party needs to change. It needs to reconstitute itself and, get back to its real core values and this, that, and the other. And so I've been trying to envision, oh, how is that possible? How could that happen? And would they really reorganize the party that's there now, or would they develop another party? But it had not occurred to me, because I've been so worried about them that, maybe it's not, reconstituting or refurbishing the Republican Party or a new right party. Maybe that's a different way to look at it. And maybe it's a workers' party, and which might attract people that have found themselves on either side.
Yeah, I saw some crazy statistics over the amount of different sort of coalitions, groups of people across America who don't really vote for Democrats because they want to. They vote for them to keep the Republicans out. And if you can sort of build that coalition of workers, of Black people, of Latinos, etc., you could have a real force there. So if you spoke to people's actual needs and economic needs and sort of empowering workers and bringing democracy into workplaces, that could be a game changer. And nothing's going to be achieved overnight with these things. But I think, again, we're seeing, as we've been speaking about over the last few months, the sort of the trade union movement rising from the ashes in America with the United Auto Workers and other groups of workers sort of taking the fight back to their employers again. And that sort of worker organisation lends itself to political organisation. It's a very similar mirror sort of movements. And I think the sort of the state of the rest of American politics is kind of perfect time to start offering a viable, real alternative to what's going on, because it's clear. I mean, you were just talking then about the Tea Party and stuff, and it echoed over here with UKIP and dragging the Conservatives to
Nigel Farage.
I mean, whatever you think of Nigel Farage, and I'm absolutely no fan, but arguably the most successful politician of the last few decades in this country without ever winning an election.
Yeah.
Taken over the ruling party, and
that's right,
drags them to the far right. And it's a mirror image.
Same thing over there that happened here. Exactly. Yeah. They had a strategy, and they were playing the long game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think sort of funny money has played a big part of it as well. I mean, if it's ever going to be possible to properly and fully follow the money, I think you will find that there does end up being. I think it's been proven already. Quite a lot of Russian oligarch money put into the Leave campaign, the Brexit, Leave campaign. I think history will probably tell you that there's been quite a lot of Russian money put into quite a lot of destabilizing political projects in Western countries.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. It's a crazy landscape out there. It's easy to go down a rabbit hole, and I think that's what happens with a lot of people. And then they find other people that are saying the same thing, and they feel part of something, a part of a group. Unfortunately, it's been a lot of crazy conspiracies that people have been banding together over. But by the same token, people could band together over something positive like workers' rights and start seeing that as non-political, really, as neither right or left. Well, it is left, but you know what I mean. It's like don't present it that way. It's like, hey, we're for getting more rights for workers, and that's it. If you're a working person, you belong in our party.
I think, yeah, to a certain extent, I think we should unashamedly talk about left-wing economic policy. Absolutely, it's almost impossible if you stick to economics to argue against what we're doing. But the coalition has to be bigger. It has to be anti-racist. It has to be sort of anti-homophobic, and sort of build that coalition from just reasonable people that aren't going to put up with sort of women's rights being messed with and stuff like that. And I think as long as the problem is the media landscape is just built to drag anything like that down immediately, and yes, absolute clowns just screaming that you're woke at you and stuff without any understanding of and
were
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Ray. All I was going to ask is, it's just where the media sort of consensus is stacked against it. Is there still I don't know, sort of state intervention around things? The McCarthyite type denunciations and things. Would that kind of thing still happen in the United States if you were seen to threaten the status quo? Or
I'm not sure. I don't think it is happening. I think it's happening, but not from the government. I think it's, well, people in the government are complicit, but I think the pressure comes from outside, like lobbyists and all that. But the weird thing is, a lot of it does go back to Russia and Russian money, Russian interference, and it's changing minds and perceptions here. That's the most dangerous thing I can think of, and to hear people talk. And now people are beginning to talk favorably about Hitler in the United States.
That's strange. I must admit, I haven't seen anything like that. So could you expand on that?
Oh my gosh. It's, yeah. Even, well, Kanye West was one that started it, one Alex Jones, but it's, people are saying, well, he was a really smart man. And Trump has always praised Hitler. And he's been quoting Hitler at his rallies recently and saying, that immigrants are poisoning the blood, and saying that we've got to get rid of the vermin, the immigrants.
Does Trump and his supporters realize you're almost entirely immigrants, and the people he probably don't like are the indigenous people of that continent?
Does Trump realize his real name isn't even Trump? His parents immigrated, here. Absolutely. His name is Drumpf.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we should call him. But anyhow, or something much worse.
But this sort of right-wing rhetoric, it's seeping in almost everywhere where there isn't a strong left-wing sort of voice. And that's where it was so interesting talking to Francisco, where we are seeing socialists win in Latin America again, partly because the sort of the north of the border's eyes off of it, because they're terrified of creating allies for Trump in the run-up to it. So they've been kind of allowed to just have free reign and sort of pick some decent people. Argentina sort of the one that's failed so far, where they've an absolute maniac.
Right, yeah. I have noticed more left leaders winning in in Latin America, which is nice and a relief.
I
Because
think with Latin America as well, I think it's always been sort of US foreign policy whack-a-mole of if one Latin American country at once scores, you know, has a left-wing leader, a left-wing party in power, that it needs to be whacked down. And I think at the moment, I think that by far, I think most Latin American countries have left-wing governments. It's
hopefully they can keep them.
sort of waning of American influence in the area, perhaps, or I don't know whether it's indicative of something.
Right. Well, I tell you one thing that I think portends something positive is, oddly, I think the overturning of Roe v. Wade in women's reproductive rights has awakened a sleeping giant. And, you know, there are more women voters in this country than there are men. And most women, you know, regardless of their political leanings, do not want government interference in their bodies and making their medical decisions for them. We've had some horrible cases here that have come up right away as soon as these ridiculous laws have gone into effect. There was a woman in Texas who was pregnant, and her child was not viable. It wasn't going to be able to live. And if she had carried the baby to full term, it was going to be a danger to her. And when the baby was born, it would suffocate to death. It would have a long and agonizing death. So, but they wouldn't allow her, you know, to get a medical abortion, forbid her to leave the state and all this. And then the baby died. So then she had a dead baby. And there's a woman right now that's carrying a dead baby, and they won't let her get rid of it.
It's heartbreaking.
It's insane. And so women are just not going for that. I don't care, you know, what party you're a member of. And then it's also, you know, really portends, okay, if they're going to get into that, then what else are they going to try to control? You know, what other privacy am I giving up? And if you give an abortion, you know, in certain states here, the doctor will be charged with murder, no matter what the circumstances. There was I think she was 10. She wasn't older than 10. A little girl who had been raped by someone and got pregnant. And they were going to make her carry that baby to term. Can you imagine what that would have done to her for the rest of her life, to have to go through that at that age? It's horrible. They don't care about women at all. Women are baby makers.
The absolutely insane thing to me with that as well, it's these same people would be extremely pro death penalty and stuff like that. So why is life on one end sacred, not the other end?
Right.
And
why is the mother's life not important?
Absolutely, 100%. And yeah, it's not for a bunch of old white privileged men to decide what women do with their bodies. It's just completely unacceptable.
It is not acceptable. And then what about, you know, they go out and they shoot up, you know, abortion clinics and doctors' offices that, you know, and murder doctors and everything. But yet, you know, it's like, what about that life? You know, it's like you're so. And then what about the lives of all the school children in America that get mowed down every year? You know, we have school shootings constantly here.
Absolutely. It's,
I
yeah.
can't,
You know,
I can't,
and they won't even consider banning those assault weapons. I mean, and they don't want to hear about the reason they don't use those kind of weapons here to hunt, you know, game like deer or whatever people hunt, which I don't like that either. But is because it blows the bodies apart. And so that's what it does to children. I mean, thank God I didn't have to look at the images, but I did hear the descriptions during some of these cases. And, you know, kids were just unrecognizable. They'd only knew who they were because of their shoes. They recognized their shoes, but their heads were blown off. They were blown apart, their bodies. And yet the Republicans don't even want to talk about it. It's like thoughts and prayers.
But again,
And,
what are the
yeah, they'll
doing?
go to the mat for, you know, a little embryo that's
But
not cognizant of anything.
I mean, I'm 99.99% sure the Democrats have got a 100% different position on abortion. But what have they done about gun control?
Well, we do have a different position on gun control. They haven't been able to get anywhere with it. I mean, yeah, the gun lobbies now they are weakened. They are weakened now. It's, you know, becoming more and more, you know, apparent that it's just going to keep getting worse, and more guns do not make us more safe. Also, there's been so much scandal around the NRA and its relationship with Russia. And, you know, I mean, they brought in a little Russian spy a few years ago, you know, to the NRA. You know, she was part of the Russian gun club, which they don't have in Russia. People don't have guns in Russia. They're not allowed to keep guns. And, but she was like a gun enthusiast from Russia. Well, she turned out to be a spy. And they sent her back and she was hailed a hero, you know. I mean, this whole Russia thing, it's so weird because Russia seems to be struggling in so many ways, you know, at least their people are, you know, financially.
I mean, the same could probably be said for much of the sort of Midwest and sort of them deindustrialized states up in, I mean, Detroit and that. It's,
Yeah.
I think we live in patches and often forget that there are huge swathes. I mean, certainly in the United States, but also in Great Britain, of extreme deprivation and poverty. Neither of us live in rich countries. We live in countries with rich people in them.
Yeah.
It's that isn't the experience of most of the population. And I mean,
No.
that's why I'm sure you'll both agree. That's why I'm more a fan of forget what country you were born in, forget what colour your skin is. What class are you? Do you sell your labour to make a living, or do you own a load of shit that you try and exploit people to make money for you from? That's the only divide that should matter and does to me.
well,
But that goes counter to the propaganda of, oh, they're trying to make a new world order. They're trying to make us all be part, you know. And it's like, that doesn't sound like a bad idea to me. I don't know what would be so bad if we were all sort of, you know, connected under one big tent or something. I'm sorry, George.
all I was gonna say there is that is the game, isn't it? The game is the only way that they can win is if they separate people. If they manage to, you know, this is racial separation. This is women against blokes, or this is gay people and straight people.
Yeah.
That's the only way that they can prosper, is to find the dividing lines and get their wedge into that dividing line and push people apart. That's the game. And the counter to that game is unity, isn't it?
Yeah.
So look at the world, and there is far more that you have in common with your fellow working class people in countries around the world within your own country than you do with a billionaire or a newspaper magnate or that is the game, isn't it?
It
So-
is. It really is. And I mean, particularly in America, we are, kind of isolated quite a bit. I mean, we do have, Canada and then in Mexico and Central America, not too terribly far away. But I just wish everyone had a chance to do some international travel, because I haven't done a lot of traveling, and I seem to keep going back to the same places all the time. But I can't express how much that has broadened my view, and to just be somewhere in another place where you're not familiar and just immerse yourself, and you find good people, wonderful food, new ideas. And I mean, to me, it's just wonderful, to have different, styles, traditions, cultures, and things. I mean, otherwise it would be kind of boring if we all, even is down to the way we dress, I mean, I revel in the differences. I mean, the differences are what are wonderful, and then I mean, we all are really the same. The outside dressing might be a little bit different, but we are, all the same. And that's what you find when you are able to spend real time with other people from other places. It's like, oh, they have that same problem too, or they, we agree on this, or so I think, it's too bad the U.S. government can't, like, at the time someone, turns 21 or something, send them on a trip, for a month or two just to absorb what's out there. And that, no, everyone in the world is not jealous that they're not American, because that's what we grow up being told and thinking, like, oh, well, I'll be fine. I'm American. Nobody's going to mess with me.
And that is exactly what they want, isn't it? They want to be able to go. You better accept your lot as it is now. Otherwise, that work will be going to the workers in in country X. That'll be going to the workers in Indonesia, or that will be going to the workers in in another country. And then guess what? Guess what they're saying in the other country? You better accept your lot as well. Otherwise, the work will be going to another country. So that's the game the world over, isn't it?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it really is. And we're the patsies, the working people are the patsies. We're just, actually, it's really a form of enslavement, if you want to be technical. But we're enslaved by ourselves. We're allowing ourselves to be enslaved.
Well, just speaking about that as well, I've been following the Tesla strike that's going on in Sweden. A very interesting dynamic that's going on, because I think in Sweden, I think the number of the percentage of people that are covered by collective agreements is something like 90% of workers are covered by collective bargaining. The Swedish model, basically, if workers want to organise collectively, the employer should sit down and negotiate a bargaining arrangement with them. It seems to work for most companies. Elon Musk has categorically ruled out even the notion of sitting down and discussing, having negotiations to have a trade union in his Tesla operation, and the Swedish Labour movement has said, "Well, okay then," and brought the fight to his doorstep. I think there was a court case because when you register a vehicle in Sweden, you send off to the department that registers the vehicles, prints out the license plates, and then they go into the post and come to the factory, and then they can be used on the vehicles. Well, all the post workers have said, no, we don't deliver those to the Tesla factory whilst this dispute's going on. They took that to the court, and the court has said, no, in Sweden we don't get involved in labour disputes. It's a legitimate dispute. We're not interfering. We're not, and it carries on. I think the dispute is also spreading to. I think it's spread to sort of subcontract sort of supply chain things that come from Finland and from Denmark. So I think all the Nordic countries in solidarity are adamant that no. I think the answer to this is you need to recognise the trade union at Tesla.
Yes.
I mean, come on. Does he not have enough money? Is that what it is? He needs some more. He's afraid he's going to have to pay $1 extra for somebody's health care or something. It's so unbelievable. If I would have to think if I was sitting in his shoes, it would be embarrassing. He's embarrassingly wealthy, and here he is, fighting with people who are just trying to have a good standard of living, for their work, which they should be well rewarded for. And he's up there fighting, against that. I mean, I would just be embarrassed to do that if I was him, but I guess that's the difference. I don't think he's got like a empathetic bone in his body.
I think it's a very sort of Americanized way to deal with trade unions. I think apart from certain parts of the country, I think you see it with Jeff Bezos and Amazon spend absolute fortunes on union busting efforts. And
yeah,
I mean, we are seeing it creep into the UK, sort of American style union busting. And I think these are picking fights with very, very well established trade union movements with long histories and a pride in how we conduct ourselves and how, when needed, we can tear the throats out of our employers. I think he's picking weird fights in the sort of Nordic countries as well, where they're very, very strong trade unions. IF Metall, which I think is the union that Musk has gone to war with here.
Maybe this is sort of parallel to what's going on with women's health. It's like, I think probably these guys are underestimating the union movement. And it's like a sleeping giant, like you said. You conduct yourselves, well and everything, but don't mess with us.
I mean, I think the union movement in America is probably a sleeping giant. I think the union movement across much of not Europe, but Northern Europe and the Nordic countries,
here
very much awake and ready to go to war.
Well, we need your help then. You guys need to be reaching out to American trade unionists, or we need to get something going or something. I don't know what it is, but we need to catch the fire from you guys.
It's that.
I think it's starting.
I think as well, a part of that sort of United States exceptionalism that you're the best, like you talked about, where you get brought up thinking we're the best, everyone wants to be us. That sort of is a barrier to reaching out and trying to find support and building international solidarity. Where
Absolutely.
Most of Europe and again, as George pointed out, it isn't just in Sweden now. This is happening. I just read an article where the dock workers in Denmark just not moving Tesla stuff now in solidarity. And if you want to look for the best example of international solidarity, you don't have to look further than any dock across most of the world. It's historically been absolute, from Italian dock workers refusing to move weapons going to the Middle East, to the Rolls-Royce workers up in Scotland refusing to build plane engines that were going to be used in Chile under Pinochet and
Right.
stuff. It's our movement's one that at its heart understands the importance of international solidarity. And again, I think these billionaires pick off more than they can chew. I'd argue as well about Musk's actual ability. I mean,
Yeah.
he's lost a fair bit of value on Twitter, because I refuse to call it X. Pretty
I know it's a
insanely,
stupid name. But yeah, I don't think he's the brilliant, you know, he's had a lot of help from his parents. And
he's
then
basically
also,
buying other people's ideas and stealing
yeah,
their
and
ideas,
yeah,
pretending.
other people's ideas and work. And then also, like with Twitter, that wasn't his money. He got $40 billion from investors, and you know, so he's blowing other people's money. So he just blew it up. I mean, it's Twitter's, you know, not near what it used to be.
I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting to me that you can have all this money and buy people's stuff and say the weirdest things, and people will sort of think you're this genius and you're the most influential person.
Oh, he's just eccentric. Yeah.
I wouldn't say even eccentric. He's just saying bonkers shit and hoping.
Oh, I know. I can't stand him either. You know, he's so cold.
It does seem to show one of the contradictions in the model as well. Why have Tesla set up in Sweden? Tesla have set up in Sweden because it's a prosperous country. Individual workers have quite a lot of expendable income, and Teslas are quite an expensive item. It's a good market for selling Teslas into. But why do workers have quite a lot of money in their pockets? Probably, the 90% density and the fact that they have good wages are linked in some way. So in him trying to undermine that model of union density within his factory, it's undermining the model that supports his ability to sell cars, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, I mean, everything he does, I say, why would he do that? Like, I don't understand why he keeps going on Twitter and saying, terrible things, really, racist and far right wing and, all that. It's like, why would you do that? Because you're going to lose a lot of people. This is your business. Why not just let the business go run and you stay out of it? Why do you have to be a personality? But obviously he likes the attention.
At the risk of being controversial, he's from an apartheid emerald mine owning family. I don't imagine the apple fallen far from the tree.
I mean,
yeah, that's right. I forgot about the emerald mines
as well. I think with these billionaires, these billionaires they're never going to skew towards sort of left-wing economic ideas. I think they're always going to find more of a home in the bosom of the far right and sort of that rhetoric. So you shouldn't be surprised when they're all sort of mad racist when they've got a platform somewhere.
Yeah. That's what's funny is why would any working person be right wing? Because the right is never going to go for the benefit of workers.
We've got a media class that controls the narrative, funnily enough, controlled by also very rich individuals, where it might not be in their interest to let the cat out of the bag that maybe socialism might be good for you as workers and the working class. And I think that's probably the root of it.
I mean, socialism is definitely still a dirty word.
It shouldn't be.
States.
it shouldn't be. But that's what we're here to do, to break that barrier down and
Yeah.
kick the door in and throw socialism at
I mean,
every
you have to. You really have to, because it's all in, programming and in what we've been fed. So you got to break that.
I read,
Introduce a
I mean,
different
just on
idea.
that, I know we spoke about healthcare quite a lot on the show and in universal healthcare because it's such a big issue for you. But I read somewhere that the American taxpayer pays twice as much to not have free healthcare than we do in the UK because of admin costs, insurance costs. It costs the US taxpayer double what it's costing us in the UK to have
For private insurance.
without any insurance, with no insurance, just
Oh.
these subsidies. The American government has to subsidise healthcare to the tune of double what the UK taxpayer does, and we get free. So it was interesting just
Hmm.
how having a profit motive still doesn't actually do anything. All it's done is pushed, I'd imagine, hundreds of thousands of American working people into unmanageable debt and losing houses and not being able to afford proper medical care. And it's insane that
It
a system
is.
that isn't working, doesn't work, will never work, is actually costing these taxpayers more than it would just give it from everyone.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because people don't get, preemptive care. They don't go in until there's an emergency, and then it's going to be expensive.
Hmm.
No preventive, care here. It's. I mean,
And presumably no incentive to as well, because, for example, in the NHS, if you stop somebody from becoming ill, you don't have to treat them when it's more expensive and they are ill, or
right.
the emergency of being rushed into hospital for something.
Right.
Presumably, the incentive is to let somebody become ill because then they become a paying customer in the other model.
Yeah. And so it's the insurance companies and the doctors. Even, I mean, here doctors are all rich. I mean, I'm sure there's one or two somewhere that is donating his time, but doctors are very wealthy, and I've got friends in Europe that are doctors, and they laugh. I say, "Oh, you're a doctor, you're rich," and they go, "Yeah, no, this is not America," and it's like, I mean, I guess I can see, doctors are very important and they're highly specialized and skilled, but what about teachers? Teachers are probably one of the most important jobs that there are, because they are training people for the future, and they've got their hands on our future. But yet, and we always praise, oh, teachers are so wonderful, but we don't pay them jack, but yet doctors, it's like we pay them millions and millions. I don't get the disparity in some of these things, the way that we as Americans look at things. It seems to be all, but it's only because we've become accustomed to it. That's the way it's been. That's what we know. And we're trained to be distracted and not think about, oh, how could this improve? Why is it that we do things this way when it could be so much more streamlined or so much better?
Yeah, and we've run out of time. It looks like we're about to head over the hour mark. But just before we go, if you want to support us here, What's Left, our Patreon's on the screen. That's patreon.com/What's Left Radio. And if you want to get in touch or have a guest you want to see us get on, feel free to email us at whatsleftradio@gmail.com. So what is left? For me, I think 2024 needs to be the year where we see more governments taken by the left, and we sort of dispel that dirty words that is socialism in the United States and further afield. And before we go, I want to express my personal solidarity, and I'm sure I speak for both you, George, and Renee, with the people of Gaza. Hopefully that absolute monstrosity stops and people can start rebuilding. And going into 2024 now, my solidarity and what's left solidarity to every worker entering dispute and in struggle and fighting for better terms, conditions, wages, and just dignity.
United we stand,
Absolutely.
divided we fall.
See you, everyone.
See you later.
Everybody, Happy New Year.